Hello, book two for July 2020. I was about to say June because time is passing by so quickly. We're reading the Freemasons because we also need to know how these organizations and institutions work in our society, because our society is in a moment of transition and of shift. So let's go. Theodore Roosevelt, like McKinley and Taft, was a Freemason and an active one. In several public statements, he emphasized the link that Freemasonry provided between important public figures and the ordinary middle-class American. He wrote in 1898, "I enjoy going to some little lodge where I meet the plain, hard-working people on the basis of genuine equality. It is the equality of moral men." And he made an almost identical statement 20 years later. Excuse me. But, as always, Masonic solidarity did not prevent bitter rivalry between two Freemasons who were ambitious politicians. Theodore Roosevelt had supported Taft in the presidential election of 1908, but 4 years later, after he returned from his tour of England and Africa, he ran against Taft for the nomination as Republican candidate for president at the Chicago Convention. A bitter conflict at the convention led to a split in the Republican Party, with Roosevelt running against Taft as an independent Republican. The Democratic candidate Woodrow Wilson beat both Taft and Roosevelt went off on a visit to South Africa. After the outbreak of the First World War, Roosevelt energetically supported the campaign to bring the United States into the war on the side of the Allies. He denounced the pro-Germans and the isolationists and President Wilson's policies of neutrality. When the United States declared war on Germany, he supported the war, but criticized Wilson's administration for its unpreparedness. His flamboyant career ended when he died in his sleep on January 6, 1919, at the age of 60. But the 1930s were over 2 million. There were over 2 million Freemasons in the United States. The claim that they numbered 3,303,660 amounted to 12% of the male white population may be an exaggeration. It has been suggested that the Freemasons' strength and influence reached its peak at this time and has declined in the last 70 years. This may be a cause of statistics being misleading. It is true that the rise in the number of Freemasons has not kept pace with the growth of the population of the United States. It is also true that if the office of President of the United States is taken as the test of Masonic influence, their position in the first half of the 20th century was much more impressive than in earlier or later times. In the 108 years between 1789 and 1897, 8 of the 23 presidents were Freemasons: Washington, Madison, Monroe, Andrew Jackson, Polk, Buchanan, Andrew Johnson, and Garfield. In the 56 years between 1897 and 1953, 7 of the 9 presidents were Freemasons: McKinley, Theodore Roosevelt, Taft, Harding, Hoover, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and Harry S. Truman. Only Woodrow Wilson and Calvin Coolidge were not Freemasons. In the 48 years since 1953, only 2 of the 10 presidents, Lyndon B. Johnson and Gerald Ford, were Freemasons. But these figures can be misleading. When the Freemason McKinley was elected president in 1896, he defeated the Democratic candidate, the Freemason William Jennings Bryan. Bryan was again defeated by McKinley in the 1900 election, and by the Freemason Taft in 1908, but was appointed Secretary of State by the non-Mason Woodrow Wilson, after Wilson had defeated Taft and Theodore Roosevelt in 1912. The Freemason Thomas R. Marshall was Wilson's vice president from 1913 to 1921. Eisenhower was not a Freemason, but he appointed the Freemason James McKay to be his Secretary of the Interior. During the 20th century, there were Freemasons on the right, in the center, and on the left of American politics. On the right, there was J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and General Douglas MacArthur. In the center, Truman and Wendell Willkie. And on the left, Franklin D. Roosevelt and his vice president, Henry A. Wallace, who was denounced as a pro-communist fellow traveler after 1950. Fiorello H. LaGuardia, who was 3 times mayor of New York City from 1934 to 1946, was a Freemason. He was denounced as a traitor by Mussolini because he, an Italian by origin, had strongly supported the United Nations and the Allied cause during the Second World War. So, had a lot of presidents that were Freemasons, a lot of people in leadership that were Freemasons and still are. I wonder if Obama was a Freemason or Prince Hall Mason. It's an interesting question. Maybe he wasn't a Mason at all. I wonder. Maybe I'll go check that out. Thank you for supporting me. And until next time, take care of your mind, take care of your body, and be safe. Please.